I'm sorry, I'm Justin Turvey, Head of Place Development at Epsom and Ewell. I'm going to talk about backlog funding and our bid, but just to give you an idea of how we got to where we got to in the bidding, a bit of background is useful. So we're a very small Surrey district. We're a very small team actually. Get about 1,000 major, minor, other planning applications a year, plus a lot of the other stuff that you're used to. Performance really sort of suffered over the past few years, and issues particularly built up during COVID. Funnily enough, you should just mention it. And we really struggled to get back on our feet. So sort of beginning of 2022, we had a team of 5 planning officers, and they had 500 major, minor, other planning applications between them, of which about 100 were in time. So you're looking at, sort of 80% of the workload being backlogged before you even got onto anything. I started in January 2022. The second week of my job, we received a risk of designation letter from DLUC, understandably, really. And obviously, given that it's a 2-year rolling period, they're looking at, we got another one in 2023. So next slide, please. So in advance of all the sort of the funding, we'd looked at what we needed to do in terms of improving the DM service, and we'd embarked on our own little transformation program, done a business process re-engineering, which supported the need for additional staff and supported the need to fund posts and get consultancies support in. And a little plug for PAS. I don't think Pete's on the call, is he? But we used the DM Challenge Toolkit if anyone wants to have a look at that. So what we found was that we needed improvements to IT, improvements in how we managed our caseload, things that were process-wise were pretty slow, like planning officers validating their own planning applications, planning officers doing their own planning enforcement cases. Really, so we found staff needed to validate and a planning enforcement officer. So we've managed ourselves to get performance improvement, but a backlog sort of remained. If you could just look onto. Perversely, I suppose, there's a bit of a counterintuitive thing about trying to improve performance at the same time as trying to clear out your backlog, because every time you clear out a backlog application, it affects your figures, doesn't it? So why would you want to clear out the backlog? There's almost sort of no incentive to do it. And it took us a fair amount of time to get into a position to sort of walk that tightrope between performance versus backlog. And it's, it's not just relying on extensions of time and dealing with angry agents. You need to kind of come up with a plan, I suppose, that's better than performance agreements. So our members, were aware of the issues, fed up with residents, blah blah blah, complaining about delays. They'd separately, in advance of the Planning Skills Delivery Fund, had agreed a bit of a backlog funding, both for tree applications and for planning applications. And funnily enough, that happened just before the bid was opening. Next slide. So with that sort of background, it's easy to see why we went for the 100k backlog funding. As I say, we're already on DLUC's radar. A bit of you've talked about the bidding process. I think a bit of a criticism of the bid was the tight timetables, which I suppose focused our mind in that we'd only wanted to go for backlog funding. We didn't really think about skills. But I think next time round, I hear what a lot of people are saying about BNG design, and certainly I think if there's another round of bidding, we'll be looking to skills in the future. Another little top tip, I think we fall somewhere between the 2-hour bid and the 2-day bid form filling, but we had a bit of project management support, which I think really sort of helped. Maybe there's a tendency for us to overthink the questions if you're sort of working full time on it, and giving it to a project manager really helps sort of free up our time and speed up the process. Next slide. So what our bid, and actually, but I'll come on to this later, and it's probably a question for you, Sinead, is how it sort of changes since the bid went in about a year ago now. Is that what we'd said at the time was that we wanted to spend it on temporary staff, we wanted to spend it on overtime for existing staff, changing part-time staff to full-time staff, and getting additional consultancy support in addition to that 100k spend, in addition to our 60k. So that's what we were looking at. Slide, please. So it's easy to spend that 100k, I think, but some problems arose really given the timescales and things changing since the bid was made. So we kind of started spending the money. So a question we'd had was, well, can it be backdated? We've already started to spend this money before we got it in. Is there flexibility in how we can spend? In fact, we did this a couple of months ago, Shelley, and since then, we've got a member of staff going on maternity leave. So I think, oh, actually, can we, use that to backfill that post? And there's the ongoing challenge in terms of finance, because that 100k is sitting there waiting to be spent on various things. And every time I say I need money for something, they say, well, you've got this 100k, X amount of this 100k there. Why can't you spend that? That's why maybe that's not what the bid said. So there was a question about actually how flexible is the bid. Does it matter if we didn't spend it on what we say we were going to spend it on, provided the backlog comes down? Probably not. Hopefully is the answer. So from our perspective, our backlog of major, minor and others has come down since the bid was made and since the bid started coming in. And so to that extent, we've been working on other stuff, which, although not a performance indicator, is stuff that is relates to development and is stuff that gets developers annoyed. So we're working on conditions, particularly because we've got a massive backlog of those. Working on pre-apps, you've touched on the non-material changes and things like that. So we're spending money indirectly on those sorts of things. And I suppose a question for the group or for you, Shelley, is that okay? We're also thinking about spending it on tree support. And the question again, is that backlog funded? Next slide. Oh, that's me. Thank you.